Yeah, very good morning. I think it's not the first class for you guys today, so still very good morning. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So, Amrita, Venkatagiri, Kritika. Good morning, Amrita. Good morning, Shamala Shivakumar. Shamala Shivakumar. Um, good morning, Ilamati, Samyukta, Tangavarma, Adams, Harini, Ovyashri, Sarandako, May Rahul, Sai Suvedu. Good morning, guys. Okay, everyone is on live. Okay. Kadir, yeah, Kadir. Morning. There was little problem with thumbnail, so I have to uh, come to I wanted to make one more live. That's what you missed it. Okay. So who else? 8 members are showing here. Who else have to join? Shamala Sivakumar. Who is that Srivarshan? Are you able to hear me properly? Are you able to hear me properly? Yeah, Srivarshan. Right. I remember. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Who else, ma? Who else has to come? Kritika. Prakalya didn't come. Good morning. Asha Krishna, good morning. Samyukta. Prakalya. Prakalya had to join. Ashwin. Ashwin is here. Ashwin Kumar. Okay, fine, guys. So today, remember the previous classes we discussed about, ecosystem till this ecological succession. It means we have discussed, different aspects of this ecosystem, both structural aspects and functional aspects. You would have remembered the flowcharts that I gave, right? So from now, you need to remember one thing, that from now we are almost came to the end of the portions, right? We have left with only 3-4 lessons, 3-4 lessons. This is we'll complete today or next class by we'll be completing, and then we'll be taking up the 13th lesson, organisms and population. Also, it's a very one or two topics left. That's it. So where we know we doesn't really require to show any sort of videos regarding this, because these are all very general topics, so which needs an explanation. But if anything needed as a pictures or animations, I'll try to show, right? So in this lesson we already discussed about productivity and different functions like productivity, where we talked about GPP, NPP, and decomposition, right? Yesterday I gave homework to revise, right? So decomposition and the different types, like different stages involved in this decomposition. We talked about ecological pyramids and when it will be stable, when it will be inverted, when it will be upright. In conditions we discussed, and types of pyramids also we discussed, and even energy also we have discussed, right? And now today we'll try to discuss about what is a ecological succession, right? So everyone is here. Srividya, yeah. Srividya, good morning. Still I didn't see Prakalya didn't come, Ashwin Kumar didn't come. I'm telling that if these lessons were missed right now, again, you can't really expect to teach, because we are running short of time. When the school reopens, you'll be rushed in revisions and etc. Okay, so please do attend the classes. Take these classes seriously. These are not just revision classes. We are going to complete the syllabus, so please don't take it as easy. Just take it seriously, especially the one people who are irregular. Please make sure that you regularly visit these videos. Okay, that's what I'm taking in YouTube, so that if you miss also, you can go back and you can see. Okay, so we already waited enough time, so let's move on. So when we talk about this lesson ecosystem, right? So 14th chapter, we are dealing now with 14.6, that is ecological succession. So what do you mean by ecological succession? So let me ask you questions from previously taught topics, right? So my question is, on what basis this NPP is dependent upon? NPP is dependent upon what? NPP. NPP. Dependent on. You have to. You, have, you guys have to respond. No? So the question is, NPP is dependent on what? Or secondary productivity is dependent upon what? So yeah, C version GPP minus R equal to NPP. Okay, fine. Good. GPP, right? Very good. Right. So can you name any two processes that occurs in decomposition? Any two stages, two important stages that occurs in decomposition types. The next question is decomposition types. System becomes so slow. Yeah, can you name one? You have to quickly recollect, right? What are the different stages we find in decomposition? Okay, fine. Right. Very good. So one more question, that is detritus food chain, right? Detritus food chain is dependent upon which food chain? Detritus food chain is dependent upon which food chain? Detritus food chain is dependent upon which food chain? DFC, detritus food chain, is dependent upon which food chains? Is my question is making sense? Okay. Detritus food chain is dependent upon GFC. Yeah? Okay. What is GFC? Sai, organic matter. I'm asking about whole. Yeah, of course, it is partially correct, but I'm asking a whole food chain is dependent upon which food chain? Exactly, grazing food chain. Okay, with this we can actually straight away go into the topic. Let's move into the ecological succession. So if you see this ecological succession, so in the name itself, the terminology itself, we can really, make and get an idea of, right? So if you see this succession, so it is a gradual change. If you see this, this concept, we actually deal with within the communities. So if you remember, in organisms and population, we talked about how population do interact or respond for the climatic, different biotic and abiotic factors, right? So over a period of time, these populations which forms the communities would definitely show a behavior, right? So likewise, during this kind of a changes, right, this communities attained a climax. It means from there won't be any much changes would be occurred, or changes cannot be seen once this community attains that stage, and it would be all in sync with the environment, right? And if you see this succession, right, it is a gradual change. One follows the other, one follows the other. That's what succession means. So here we are talking about the succession in the aspects of ecosystem. Okay, right. Very good, guys. Everyone is correct. Yeah. So you see this ecological succession, it is nothing but gradual, slow, and predictable change. It means once we will talk about this, how the succession do happens in different, when we talk about plants, we will talk about how the succession happens in the plants as well. So this succession is, the ecological succession is nothing but it's a gradual, slow, and predictable change in the species composition. Right, the species composition will be there within the community in the form of population and then species, right? So the species, composition or would be predictably changed over a period of time, which leads to climax community, in which this climax community, which is formed within this area, would be on par with the environment. It means they will be in equilibrium with the environment. It will not further evolve. It will not further develop into few more species, right? So it will not change. So at that point of time, that those forms, that community forms, or reach the climax, right? So that is one of the important aspect of this ecological succession. So when we talk about this ecological succession, you need to be very careful about the definition. When we talk about this definition, it is a gradual, slow process and predictable changes in species composition. So they attain certain, this community level. They attain, they form a climax community where there won't be having any further changes, and they will be equilibrium with the environment. So that makes it ecological succession. Did you understand? So if you see this ecological succession, we are talking about species composition, right? So when the species composition is varying, there is a high chance that, for example, you have A, B, C, D, E, 5 different species are there, and species different, similar species forms population and then community, right? So these, while the species are forming, right, during this ecological succession, right, some of the species colonies in that given area, which forms a population in numerous numbers. For example, out of A, B, C, D, E, maybe A, B, C would form numerous numbers of species. Those species combination or composition would be more. That's what in practicals, 12th standard practicals, when we will be talking about density, how to find out the density and density of the plants and different types of composition of species. We follow quadrat method. In that, we will be talking about different species which are dominating species within this 10 species we observed in a area, given area or selected area. So that's what reminding you guys didn't understand or what? Only few members said yes, sir. Ecological succession. Just now I told species composition change, right? Just composition of species would change, and that time, they reach to the climax community, in which there won't be any further change, and there will be equilibrium. They will be displaying equilibrium with the environment, right? So the composition would not vary. So while the succession is happening out of these five different types of species, maybe one of or three of these, maybe A, B, C, would have been getting numerous composition, but other two are there may not have composition, proper composition. So maybe they get even removed from that given area. So that is one of the, or removed in the sense they will be disappearing when the numbers are not met and the other species are dominating, and when the other species composition is rich in that particular given area, obviously other species would disappear. So that's forming, this makes relatable that only the species composition or richness during this ecological succession would eventually select few species, maybe based upon the numbers. So that's how we can see that whenever we identify, when we look into the ecosystems, we can see that only particular species are growing in this area, not other species. Why is it? Because of this ecological succession. Okay, so that's how. That is one of the important aspect that we need to understand in this ecological succession. Okay, and the next, this entire sequence of communities, right? There are different communities existing. So we are talking about ecosystems. So we have different communities as well. We have different species, different population communities, and then which forms different or similar communities would form, ecosystem, right? So when we talk about this communities, this entire sequence of communities that successively change in a given area. So these communities, so within the community, we're talking about the species distribution or composition, etc. So at the community level, when there is a change, the entire sequence of the community would successfully change in a given area. It means communities also keep on changing within a given area successively. So that phenomena we call it as seed, SCRE, seed, right? So this term is important. You need to understand that the seed is nothing but the changes, successive change in the communities. It's a series of or sequence of events that occurs in the, or sequence of or series of changes that occurs successively in the different communities present in an ecosystems, and that phenomenon we call it as seed. Okay, so this is one of the definition that is given in NCERT as well. So we need to focus on this. Okay. So within this, so this entire ecological succession is something, a dynamic process, right? So that's what we need to identify, or we need to really understand how this dynamic process would occur, and whether at the species level or whether at the community level, we need to understand. So even there would be some transitional communities also will be present, right? So there would be the transitional communities would be, you can be termed as serial stages, or serial communities. So far we defined the successive changes in this community as a seed, and there is a transitions, a quite transitions occurs in these communities, that is called as serial communities. So any transition state that are or individual transitional communities are termed to be as serial stages or serial communities. So there would be changes even within the individual communities. Okay, so individual transition. So just like our childhood to adolescent to adult, there is a transition. Like that, even these communities within the community, individual communities also undergo some transitional changes successively. and those are termed as serial stages or serial communities. Okay, right. So let's move on. So if you see this, when we keep on studying, right? So this succession can be occurring in several stages, right? In these several, stages at the same time, you have got different, types of successions as well. Okay. So if you let's learn more about this serial communities or serial stages, right? So what are the different serial stages we will find? So if you see this in the successive serial stages, there is a change in species diversity. That's what when the individual communities transition is taking place means obviously population and species also getting affected or changing, right? So in these successive serial communities or serial stages, there is a change in species diversity, increasing in number of species and organisms, and even increase in total biomass. See, so far we have discussed about numbers, pyramids of numbers, biomass, and etc. Right? So now it's a time to apply those concepts here. So when we talk about individual serial communities or serial stages, which individual transition is taking place within the community, if the community is changing, even at the level of species also, the diversity should change. Then only within a given area you will be able to find out of 5 species you will be finding out three species are dominant or the other 2 species are disappearing. How is that happening? Because of the serial stages or serial communities, right? uh, Communities, there is a species level diversity is changing. Not only species level diversity but even number of the species also increasing. If the number of species is increasing, obviously the biomass also keep on increasing, total biomass. So this is how the ecological succession takes place. Is it clear so far, guys? Is it clear? So far what I explained is the definition of, we talked about community, species, population, and we talked about community, and then we talked about succession, what a general, English meaning of the succession, term succession, what does it mean? And then I put forth this ecological succession, right? So this ecological succession and ecology, both I combine and I'm giving an example, right? Ecological succession, gradual change, right? And then I explained about what is ecological succession, right? Where do you see what is their effect with respect to the environment? Once it is done, I've talked about type of one of the succession takes place within the communities, that is serial community or serial stages. So the serial stages would change the species diversity, numbers, and even biomass also. That's how this succession takes place. Now let's move on to the next aspect, that is types of ecological succession. Yeah, you guys are understanding. Very good, very good. If you have doubts, please ask me, guys. Okay. When we talk about this types of succession, right? In the present day communities, are due to succession of millions of years. So if you see the communities which are formed right now, they are all formed by millions of years of succession. It is not a one-day process. It can't just take just like one day. It even depends upon different factors. So the different types of communities formed in a given area would be happening for a millions of years. Formation of forest or other different types of what is a ecological units, if you see, right? uh, for example, different ecosystems, how they actually, for example, forest. If you take forest, how exactly the forest would form? Is it just like okay, I'm Aladdin and I have a genie. I rub the genie lamp and in the desert I want ecosystem means, or I want forest means, the forest would form like that. So how exactly forest would form? How many years it takes to really form these many species and population and diversity among them and interspecific competition that we talked in organisms and population. I gave a little introduction about the species interactions, right? Competition, mutualism, etc. So within species and different species, they compete and they contrast. At the same time, few species will be dominant, species will be disappearing. Like that, it is a millions years of process, gradual, slow process of forming forests. For that matter, any sort of this kind of biomes or ecosystem. So it is not one day process or overnight process. So it is millions years of process. Is it making sense, guys, what I'm explaining right now? If we really imagine, you can close your eyes right now. Of course, you may be closing your eyes. Okay. So if you close your eyes right now and you just imagine how forest has formed. Now we are telling forests or lungs, we have to, safeguard the forest, so climate change, etc. But how do, in the first place, how forests form? Those things are explained by these principles. Yes, very good. So those are the things which are explained by these principles. So that's what I tell. Botany is a very key aspect to really understand the biology, how this life works around us. But when it comes to geology, how life works within us, like the physiology, is a little relatable. But if you really focus on something, introducing questions, you ask yourself how forests form, how ocean habitats within that ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems. For example, some ponds are formed. If you really ask this type of questions to you, then only you can open up and learn botany more interestingly. Otherwise, you will be sleeping, no doubt. You can't just mug up these things, and I'm damn sure that if you guys mug up, it will not be helpful in any sort of exams, be it academic CBSE or any board, or be it any sort of competitive exams. You can't mug up, or mugging up is a very outdated fashion of learning. And right now we have to visualize things, and we need to really understand things, and we have to apply things. That's how the question paper patterns are also changed in CBSE and NEET. So let's move on. So hope you understand it. So while I'm teaching this ecological succession, keep forest as an example in your mind. Whenever I say species diversity is changing, imagine you're sitting in Amazon forest, okay, a cool Amazon forest, and you have rich species diversity, and you might be surprising that how this much of species diversity is created. So quite listen to me, at the same time look in between, and then when I say close your eyes and imagine, you imagine. Okay. So when we talk about this ecological succession, right? So the present day communities are due to the succession of million years, right? So succession and evolution would have been parallel process at that, right? At that point of time. It means they can parallelly go. That's what, right? So there is an intercompetition is there, and the natural selection is there, right? And the environmental factors are there affecting this, and the genetic factors are there, which they can really adapt to the changing environment. So this evolution and ecology would go hand in hand, especially this ecological succession. So that's how they created different forests that what we see in present day scenario. So the succession can be divided into two types. One is primary succession and other one is secondary succession. What exactly this primary succession meant for? So this primary succession, if you see, this succession taking place in areas where no living organisms ever exist. So it's first the place is very empty, and there were no living organisms, right? And suddenly this life would origin, and that would take over that area. So in this pattern, the primary, that's how I told, right? So how exactly this forest would have been formed, right before Earth is forming, right? When the Earth is formed, and then it is supported the life, and the life of the origin of life happened in the ocean, and then life came onto the land, terrestrial, and that's how at that point of time might be there is no life at all. So, for example, imagine this Gobi Chittipalayam. Okay, Gobi, maybe 100 years or 200 years back, maybe it's a barren land, or barren land. It's just like this huge, deep forest or something or the other. Maybe I don't know exact years. Let's consider few thousands of years. Okay, but but gradually it may form different guards and all. So the before which there is nothing is there. So this type of succession, where the gradual change or adaptation or the gradual, introduction of this species and increasing of diversity, selection, and communities, is called succession. And when we talk about succession, there are two types. We are talking about primary succession. In the primary succession, it takes place in areas where no living organisms ever existed. For example, newly cooled lava, bare rock, newly created pond or reservoir. If you take any ponds, right? If you suddenly yeah, after Giri, okay. So after a huge rainfall, right? So you might have seen ponds are forming at different places. Before there was no pond at all. So pond forms at the same time. Some aquatic organisms comes and aquatic plants and other animals would come, and finally that pond would form. So this is primary succession. It's a very beautiful phenomenon, isn't it? Because the primary succession is very much important, because where nothing is there, and then it's gradually the life and the ecosystem is building day by day. And this primary succession, if you see that, uh, you know before even biotic communities established, there must be formation of fertile soil through natural processes, right? So before actually, if you wanted to see really a pond or some other or no organisms in a land, the soil, which is very much important factor, abiotic factor, we studied in organisms and population 13th lesson, that how this abiotic factor would affect the biotic factors, right? So within before even before formation of this biological biotic component of an ecosystem, or be it any ecosystem, first the soil needs to be fertile so that it needs to support the life. So this primary succession would be very slow process, very slow process. Is it understood? Primary succession, any doubts? Primary succession, is it understood? I'm already telling. I already told that this is not molecular biology to show some animations and all. This is something theory. At the same time, applied biology, applied aspects. All biology concepts are applied. Okay, applicatory part or there both for academics and as per the new academic model is concerned, right? Case-based studies. If we can't ignore and we can't say that biology is not at all an applied science, right? So this is applied aspects you need to focus. At the same time, neat aspect also we need to focus. So that's why I'm going a little slow. Okay. Wherever I have to go fast, I'm going fast. Wherever I have to slow down, I'm slowing down also. Please do follow me. Okay. Primary succession. Okay. Oh, okay, good. You guys understood. Right. So let's move to the next aspect. That is, yeah. Let's move to the next aspect, secondary succession. Isn't it a beautiful concept? We ever thought of it actually, right? Isn't it? It is like how exactly this entire forest has come. How, for that matter, how this lake has come. How this reservoir has formed. Right? Different lakes are formed. How is that possible? Because of this primary ecological succession. Right? That's what when we talk about this ecological aspects, they are beautiful concepts that you can really know. You can be even poet while you're reading this sort of concepts, right? You can really relate. The beauty or the aesthetic beauty or the diversity that we really see is background concepts are built. The next one is the secondary succession. That is, succession takes place in area after existed organisms or lost. For example, you just say take an forest, right? So there are existing already 100 different species or different communities out there. So the secondary succession is something which is replacing the dead one or the lost communities or lost species, isn't it? For example, abundant farmlands, or if you see burned or cut forests and lands that are flooded. So there are already few organisms existed and they are lost due to several reasons. And this, what do you say? This cutting of trees, deforestation, and burning of suddenly some wildfires is something natural phenomenon. But if it is a human intervention or any natural process, if the old communities or old species are lost, they will be replaced by this secondary succession. Examples are lands that are flooded or even burnt or cut forests. They need to be replaced. So that process is called secondary succession. So if you see the secondary succession when compared to primary succession, because it's already preformed, and you need to again develop few species, in that particular area. So this is quietly faster than the primary succession. There is no doubt in it actually, isn't it? So since some soil or sediment is already present, succession would be faster than the primary succession. The secondary succession would be faster than the primary succession. If the secondary succession is understood, primary succession where there is no biotic components, but the abiotic components like soil is very important for the formation of these biotic components in this primary succession, and it is very very slow process, right? It takes because nothing is there and something has to form, and this is slow process. And then when it comes to secondary succession, which is already formed, biotic components will be there, but when they are lost due to natural or human interventions, they needs to be replaced by the new species or communities. So it would be rather fast than the they are fast than the primary succession. So let's move on to the next aspect. Yeah, you understood. Very good, guys. Okay. So if you see this succession, changes in vegetation affects the food and shelter of the animals, obviously, isn't it? So if you take this, when there is a change, how do we relate? For example, take this room. Okay, if someone is replacing this chair, okay, someone is replacing this chair with some bed. So the shelter or the way I actually really take class would be really varying. Or suddenly they kept they removed the chair, so I have to stand and have to talk, right? And likewise, or suddenly they took the roof of this building for different purpose. Okay, so it would definitely affect my behavior. So likewise, even this ecological succession would affect the food, would affect the changes in the vegetation, because always the species are actually they are replaced when they are dead, and they are competition when they are lost, they are replaced. So even that affects the food and shelter of different animals, right? Thus, as succession proceeds, the number and types of animals and decomposers also changes. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with this statement? When the ecological succession is taking place, even the composition of associated animals and decomposers also would change. Do you agree with this statement, guys? Do you agree, guys? Oh, you guys are telling yes. Yeah, okay, great, guys. Keep interacting, okay? Very good responses, and I hope you guys are understanding. Very good. So let's move to the the aspects of succession. Right. One of the other important point is natural or human induced disturbances. That's what I'm telling. Either naturally this succession would replace, secondary succession would replace, cut, or different process, different ways that either natural or human interventions or human made or induced disturbances like deforestation, fires, etc., can really hamper the changes in this, species diversity, right? So that particularly convert a several stage, that community transition within the this transition within the communities, right? They change to an earlier stage. So they create new conditions that encourage some species and that discourage or eliminate other species. When we really deforestate, one type of forest, right? So it creates again the previous sort of conditions. So again, it needs to began with the begin with. For example, I give a basketball to you, okay, which is fully blown with air, and I ask you to put a goal. So you will put, but what I'm doing is human disturbances like deforestation of or fire to the forest or any other thing. So I'm no putting no I'm leaking this air from that basketball. So what's happening? Again, you need to get the air pump. So you're getting back to the previous stages of this several transitions, community transition. So again, you need to take the pump and you need to put the air in it. So then it becomes a ball. Then you will try to put the goal, but by that time itself there would be a lot of changes would occur around you. It means this natural or human induced disturbances, right, would actually eventually convert a particular several stage into its early stage. So it has to begin again right from the beginning. So that's why again they will be creating new conditions that actually encourage few species and they will discourage few species, and even other species would really find difficult to grow in that changing conditions would eventually eliminate. Okay, so this is about the ecological succession, right? Hope you understood so far, right? Rajorma, yeah, okay, great. So let's move into the succession of plants. So how this succession of plants takes place. So based upon the nature of the habitat. So now we have to quickly resume to the different definitions of ecosystem or different ecological terms. Right? We'll talk about habitats, we'll talk about species, and we'll talk about communities, populations, right? And then we'll talk about you know which is hydrophytes, xerophytes, succession in xerophytes. How all this succession takes place. A very very interesting kind of a topic. Even when I was doing my botany majors in my degree, right? This is a topic which really attracted this concept really attracted to more towards this botany, especially the physiology and especially this succession topic, right? Other morphology and that floral diagrams and all you can restrict to only BSc botany, and it's nothing to do with NEET. Not much importance was given in the NEET, so there is no obligatory part in that floral diagrams, but still you can you have to remember the floral formulas. So apart from that, this concept is really interesting, succession, right? So now we'll be talking about the succession in plants or succession of plants. So based upon the nature of the habitats, succession of plants is of two types. So we are talking about habitats, right? So might be the succession taking place in watered areas, or succession of plants taking place in xeric or dry areas, right? So we talked in organisms and population about this. Adaptations to different climatic conditions, right? Xeric conditions and the different adaptations that makes possible in different. For example, how these desertic animals would adapt and how these desertic plants would adapt to to cut short the loss of water, etc. We already learned. Like that, here the plants, the succession of plants, right? Now everyone knew now, right? What is exactly a succession means, right? So the succession based upon the habitat, it can be of two types. One is hydrax, that is taking place, the succession of plants taking place in the water bodies, and xerax, which is taking place in the xeric or dry conditions. So the successional series is progress from hydric to mesic conditions. In this hydrax succession, what happens is, right from water body to the land, this succession takes place. So always when I say succession, right, you should be imagining in this way. So right from point A to B, right? It starts here, ends here, climax community. So this is the way it successes, right? So formation of different species, etc. So it can actually start its succession right from the water, and then it can progress to the mesic condition. It means land soil conditions, right? And then comes the xeric succession, that is, it takes place in dry areas. The series progresses from xeric to mesic conditions. So mesic is nothing but moderate or medium water conditions. Okay, that is the final or climax community. That is what I'm saying, right? How the succession takes place, it attains the equilibrium with the environment when it forms the climax communities. So here in hydrax or xerax, they start with the dry, ends with the mesic. It starts with the watered areas and ends with the mesic. So likewise, it reaches the climax community. Is that clear, guys? Is that clear? Okay, great. Okay, very good. If you have any doubts now, you should ask me, Ra. Don't hesitate. Okay, I'm not monster. Okay, so don't hesitate. Even if I'm monster, also you should ask doubts. As simple as that. Asha Krishna is saying I'm monster. Okay, fine. So let's move to the next aspect. That is, there is an important term called pioneer species. So, who are pioneers? For example, in our BVS school, we are the pioneers who started the six innovations, right? Six innovations. So where there is no such concept existing previously, where we started with the six innovations. So we are pioneers to that. Likewise, here these are pioneer species, or the species which invaded a bare area where nothing is there, where these species actually invaded. So they would be called as pioneer species, right? So then we'll be talking about this within this succession of plants, we will be trying to understand the primary and the secondary type of succession. Okay, so how this primary succession would occur on rocks, right? If it is a xerophytic habitats. Okay, how does that happen? So it is something one follows the other, right? Succession. So you should be knowing what what are the series of species are formed, what are the series of different type of species or different types of plants are formed, that you need to focus. So I'll be giving even I'll try to give one worksheet also. You can try to you can just refer the NCERT as well. So there will be a flow chart. Okay, what led to what is next to what. So for example, if you see this primary succession on rock, xerophytic adapted habitats, right? That is xerac succession. You will be finding lichens or pioneer species. So lichens, we know, which we are not classified into any five kingdom classification. Lichens, which are association, right? Symbiotic association, right? We have got fungal and algal associations, right? These lichens or the pioneer species where they secrete acid to dissolve these rocks. So they are present on the rocks and they are secreting some acids on these rocks and they are dissolving these rocks. So that helps in weathering. Weathering of the rocks you might have studied in your 10th standard, right? Geography lesson you would have studied. Soil formation, you would have studied soil formation. Did you remember that concept? Weathering, etc. I sir have some doubts. Okay. So have you remembered this weathering concepts that you have studied in your geography, might be social studies? So if you see this weathering, right? Uh, so these acids, these lichens, which are associated on these rocks, which releases these acids on and acts on the soil and helps in weathering and soil formation. That's what I told, right? Primary succession starts when nothing is there, no biotic forms. But before biotic components are formed here itself, we need to have the soil should be prepared, right? Soil should be prepared. So the soil is prepared simultaneously, lichens association, and the soil is prepared. So where this means that you need to understand one thing, guys, that the primary succession starts from nowhere to different species, climax community. So when there is nothing is there, bare land, I've just talked about pioneer species also. So some species should start this entire process, right? So that is the first species, that is lichens, which are acting on the rocks and preparing the soil for the next organisms to grow. So then when the soil is ready, then the small plants like bryophytes can actually grow in it. So because they need only small amounts of soil, right? Because they get the more of the life from the moisture content, etc. Once they form, they are next successive plants or bigger plants, and then stable climax forest community, that is mesophytic community. Once there is this ecological succession takes place, then the climax community remains the stable as long as environments remains unchanged. This is, you need to underline this, okay? So you need to really underline this. This is important aspect. That is, until the environment changes, until the environment remains unchanged, right? This climate, this is this climax communities, at the climax communities, this entire ecological succession comes to the balance to the environment. If the climate is changing or environment is changing, obviously again the ecological succession needs to be begun, because there might be a loss of loss of different species or communities also will be observed. Okay. Yeah, if you have doubts you can ask. And then, so this is primary succession, and we talked about a pioneer species within the xerophytic habitat, right? And then now let us see how this primary succession takes place in water. So if you see this primary succession takes place in water, it starts with the pioneer species. Those are phytoplankton. You would have been remembering our biological classification. We studied about Monera, five kingdom classification: Monera, Protista, Plantae, Annualia, and even you know fungi, right? Where we talked about some bacteria, different type of bacteria. We talked archibacteria and then eubacteria. We talked about types of eubacteria as well, and we talked about photosynthetic organisms, right? Which actually, if you remember, you know dinoflagellates, right? They form these dinoflagellates might form a photosynthetic, and then you find diatoms, right? These forms is phytoplanktons, right? So if you see this primary succession in water, so phytoplanktons, which actually the primary producers of the ecosystem, So these are the planktons or the pioneers, and then they develop, and the next species would have been developed as root submerged plants. So roots are actually submerged in the water, right? So you have a hydrilla as one of the example where you can see the submerged root system. Are you able to follow, guys? So actually, before you leave this class session, right, please do subscribe as well as share this video to as many as possible. At the same time, like this videos before you leave. Okay, is everyone is watching? Because I see the count is again down. I took the small break. Okay, let's move. So when we talk about this primary succession in water, the phytoplanktons are pioneers. So this lesson in academics perspective, you need to remember what is the primary, secondary succession, what are the different different examples, what are the differences, and what is maybe these are all 2 marks or 3 marks questions. And primary succession on rocks, primary succession in water, where the pioneers are phytoplankton, and then comes the root submerged plants, and then rooted, but they are floating angiosperms. It means they are rooted, but they are floating type of. So you will find different types of mode of gamete transfer. We already talked in reproduction. First 2 lessons we already talked about how this gamete transfer would occurs during the pre-fertilization events as well. That's how you need to connect the chapters, guys. It's not that first chapter is not related to other chapter. Please, when it comes to biology or any sort of subject, I'm not talking about other subjects, but when we talk about biology, either 11th or 12th, you need to relate on, you need to interconnect these topics. Then only you can really enjoy the subject. Otherwise, you can't really enjoy, and you will be having a lot of doubts, which can be actually cleared by this approach, and you will really hate the subject. Okay. But please don't hate this subject, because this is a very lovely subject actually. It means very interesting subject. Okay, I will cut this word. Okay. Now this primary succession in water is concerned, phytoplanktons, root submerged plants, and then would be again successed to the root floating angiosperm, and then free floated plants, and then you will be finding it means if you see that the from the water, from the water condition to the land, less water habitat, they are moving actually. That's what I told. So if this what primary succession in water started here within this deep, deep ocean or deep waters or pond or something. So it starts with this phytoplankton and root submerged, root floated angiosperms, free floating plants, and they actually move towards the land, less water condition. That is mesic, right? I told na mesic. That would form the climax communities, would stop the ecological, and it means they come into the equilibrium with the environment. So then marshy meadow kind of a plants would be formed, and then shrubs, and then trees, and finally a forest community. So this is how the succession is taking place. That's what, if you wanted to construct a forest, it would be something artificial. In a natural process, is something which is starting at one point in a more water condition to the mesic in a less water condition. This is how the climax communities are formed in this water, right? So with the time, this water bodies, sometimes these water bodies would convert into land. So that's how we come across different forests. Are you able to? Did you understand this ecological succession in the case of in the case of water, primary succession in the water, where primary succession in the water means nothing is there and the species are invading, and they are pioneer species, right? They are phytoplanktons, and we have intermediate species, and that's how the succession of taking place and formation of different species diversity is created, and there's a sheer transition or sheer communities are formed, transition within the communities, and then finally we get the trees. Those are climax communities which has equilibrium with the environment and forms a forest So that's how the forest has formed. So hydrax condition to the mesac condition. So that's how this ecological succession in land and water would lead to the formation of climax communities, and finally we see this aquatic ecosystems or different biomes we see is just because of this ecological succession concept. So did you understand, guys? Yeah. So these topics are very volatile, right? Like your organic chemistry, these ecological concepts are volatile. Molecular biology concepts are volatile. Genetics are volatile. So what is not volatile in this biology? So I'm saying these are the ecology and reproduction is not volatile. You can really remember reproductive the first units of reproduction or reproduction in organisms is not volatile actually. So when it comes to volatile subjects, right, which needs to be thoroughly revised every now and then only you develop very much affinity toward the subject. You will get the grip. Even you can explain to any other person, either your peer or your even you can explain to your teachers or any sort of person. You can give seminars. You can go and you can participate in debates. If you see in AP, right, in Andhra Pradesh, government has actually this marshy plants out there, no? This mangroves. So that they are actually wanted to replace that with an with housing buildings. So how far it is eco-friendly? So when no one is talking, even I was like kept mum, because this is how governments are doing. But seriously, I'm writing for an environmentalists. Few of my friends did PhD in they are environmentalists, as well as they fight for this environment. So I'm writing for them. So to really look into that issue, and if there is any petition is needed, even I'm ready to do that. So when we see the subject within the book, it's no use. Okay, when we have to apply this concept beyond the book, that's out of box thinking is very much needed for this present generation. You will be having people will say, elderly people or other people or other teachers or any sort of people may say that these concepts are not really no, I am also teacher, 20-30 years experience. No, this is the present scenario, this is the present day approach to any sort of a subject. Okay, we need to really apply this concept. It should not be just restricted to books. I hope you guys understand. So some questions are there, I need some more discussion. What is it, what are the questions? So when please do ask the questions. So if you guys have any doubts, please do ask me, guys. Today we'll be ending this session with this ecological succession alone, and we'll take up the remaining part in the next class. And you please ask me doubts, and till the time of homework or whatever the class time is there, you need to read this ecological succession, right, and try to write the flow charts. Okay, try to write the flow chart if it is a succession definition, and then two types of succession, and within the primary what we can get, like that. Try to read as per the flow chart, so that it would be more useful. Please do ask any doubts. If you have any doubts, you can personally message or you can comment right here. Okay, please do like the video before you leave, and please do subscribe and share as much as you can, either for 11th standard, 12th standard, any board you can share, because the concepts remain the same. Let them get benefited as well. And first criteria is you guys, and you should get benefited. You can see this video n number of times. That's what I'm making these YouTube videos. When it comes to other video platforms, there you cannot really go back, and you have to screen record, and that would be really not that much feasible. Yeah, you can ask doubts, ask Krishna. What are your doubts, so that we can all discuss here. Okay, students, if you have any doubts here, please do ask. So quick recap, what we have discussed today is 14 point, if I'm not wrong, it's 14.6. Yes. So next class we'll be discussing about 14.7 and 14.8, and we'll end the lesson and we'll start with the 13th chapter. So I hope you enjoyed this session, and please do please do make use of these videos. And that is it for today, guys. Okay, so we'll meet in the next class. So until then, stay at home, stay safe, right? And please do uh, you know practice these lessons or concepts based on flowcharts. Okay, take care. Take care, guys. I hope you enjoyed the class, and please leave a feedback in the class group as well. Thank you. See you.